and welcome to Eerie Earth. I'm your host Kieran, and I'll be guiding you on your journey through the paranormal. Together we will learn about hauntings, dark tales and much more. So sit back, relax, and join me as we explore this eerie earth. When you think about a haunted house, you imagine a large, looming, weathered wooden building towering above you. Broken wooden shutters hanging from the window swaying in the wind, banging off the wall. A gigantic ornate wooden door left ajar beckoning you in, calling you. Invisible spectral fingers clutching at your clothes pulling you closer. Thick dust covers every inch of the house, and faded, cracked and broken paintings of previous owners hang loosely on the peeling walls, their eyes watching and following everywhere you go. Suits of armor stand guard, ensuring the spirits of the past never escape their worn, rotting tombs. You don't expect a 3-bedroom council house in the heart of a small market town in West Yorkshire, but this is the site of one of Europe's most prolific and violent poltergeist hauntings. This is the curious case of Mr. Nobody, the Black Monk of 30 East Drive, Pontefract. Let me take you back to 1966. The year England won the World Cup, the Beatles played their final UK gig, and Star Trek first appeared on our screens. For many, the summer of '66 was one of celebration and elation, but for one family in Pontefract, their nightmare was just beginning. The Pritchard family, Jean, Joe, Philip and Diane, moved into their new home on the Checkersfield estate in August 1966, and they started their summer off like any other family, basking in the glorious sunshine of the British summer, the children enjoying not being at school and enjoying their new home together. Jean and Joe had decided they needed a well-deserved holiday and took Diane away for the weekend, leaving Philip alone with his grandmother. On the blistering hot August bank holiday, Philip and his grandmother Sarah Scholes were determined to enjoy the most of the relaxing day. Philip had spent most of the day lounging in the garden and decided to get a drink from the kitchen. Sarah was in the living room engrossed in her knitting. As Philip made his drink and went back into the living room to head back into the garden, he noticed a very thin layer of chalk appear out of thin air. At first he thought nothing of it, thinking it was just dust falling from the ceiling, but on closer inspection he watched as white chalk appeared before his very eyes at head height, appearing out of nothing. He watched as the chalk began to make a thin layer on the mantel and on the carpet. Confused and slightly scared, he tapped his grandmother on his shoulder to get her attention, who looked up from her knitting to see this thin cloud of chalk that was appearing before them. She stood up slowly and made her way over to the mantelpiece, and with her index finger slid it through the chalk just to confirm it was real. It was. With haste, the pair darted across to Sarah's daughter's house, Mrs. Marie Kelly, who greeted them and was shocked to see the pair standing in the doorway with a thin layer of chalk on them. The trio returned to the house to watch the chalk appear once more. Confused, Marie went into the kitchen to get some cleaning supplies from underneath the sink. As she approached, she felt her feet slip out from underneath her. On the floor beneath her was a large puddle of water. At first she thought maybe someone had splashed water on the floor when doing the washing up. As she wiped the water away, before her very eyes the water reappeared. Perplexed, she wiped again, and again the water appeared. She called her mother through, who witnessed this obscure event. Convinced there was some natural explanation for the water seeping through the linoleum, Marie called the plumbing company, expressing that there had to be a burst pipe somewhere. Something was causing this water to appear. Later that day, a plumber arrived and confirmed that there was in fact nothing wrong with the pipes, and he couldn't come up with an explanation for the magical appearing water. He even lifted up the linoleum to discover that underneath it was perfectly dry. By the time the plumber had arrived, the events stopped as quickly as they had started. As well as the pools of water appearing in the kitchen and the mini snowstorm of chalk appearing in the living room, the pesky spook decided to play some tricks on the Pritchard's water supply. Every time they turned the tap or flushed the toilet, a green slimy foam oozed out of the faucets in the cistern. When they discovered this, they turned off the stopcock to the sink, but this made no difference as the foam still oozed out. The plumbing company had no explanation for this either. Later that evening, when everyone had returned home, Philip and Sarah were trying to enjoy their evening together. Thoughts of the event still dancing in their mind, Philip went to get some snacks from the kitchen for him and his grandmother. While he was in there only a few moments, all of a sudden the electric tea dispenser began to flush out ground tea leaves at an alarming rate onto the kitchen counter. Sugar from the sugar caddy began to burst out of it. Philip, who was absolutely terrified, called his grandmother, who bolted through to witness the strange event. As fear was gripping at the stomachs and the hearts of the pair, there was a loud crash that emanated from the hallway. Pale and drained, the pair looked at each other, unable to speak. Together they plucked up the courage to creep into the hallway and find the source of all the commotion. At the bottom of the stairs on the floor was a large pot plant that had usually had its home halfway up the stairs on the half landing, but had now found its way to the bottom of the stairs, smashed and broken. Soil littered the corridor and the staircase, leaves spreading all over the carnage. As they stood, slack-jawed, there was another sound erupting from the kitchen, the sound of plates crashing together. They dashed into the kitchen to find the cupboards vibrating and rattling, loud banging exploding around the house. Sarah ran next door with Philip and banged on their door. A lady answered, one Mrs. Mountain, and Sarah asked why they were banging at this time of night and asked them to stop. Mrs. Mountain looked at them very confused and said that she thought it was them that was making the racket. Scared, the pair ventured back into the house to find the noises and the activity had stopped. After a few moments of discussion about the events, the pairs decided it was time for bed, hoping that the activity would not happen again. The next day, Marie Kelly and her husband Vic were very worried about her mother and their nephew and decided to call the police in some vain attempt to try to get to the bottom of the obscure occurrences. The police obliged and met the pair at the house, but when they went into the house they couldn't see anything untoward, save that from the tea on the counter and the smashed plant on the floor. They concluded that there was nothing they could do and this was not a police matter. Lost and scared, the pair returned home to gather their thoughts and figure out what their next move was. Vic remembered that Marie had a friend who was a ghost hunter and who was fascinated with all things paranormal. They gave him a call and explained everything what was happening, and within the hour Mr. O'Donnell had arrived. As the three of them entered the house, they were met with a wall of cold air as if someone had left the fridge open. This was a good sign. The trio spent the next few hours trying to get the spirit to communicate, but to no avail. Mr. O'Donnell began to tell the Kellys about the difference between a ghost and a poltergeist when all of a sudden there was a loud crash. An oil painting which had been hanging up on the wall fell to the ground, shattering the glass. A wedding picture of Jean and Joe had fallen to the ground also. But when Marie picked up the photograph, she discovered that it had been slashed as if with a knife from one end to the other. The next day, Philip and Sarah returned to the house, but all was quiet. It was quiet too when Jean and Joe returned from holiday. Both Sarah and Philip began regaling them with the tales of the occurrences, from the tea being dispensed to the loud banging erupting around the house. Jean and Joe laughed off the stories, not believing a word they were saying, when all of a sudden 3 loud bangs exploded around the house, rattling the windows. 2 years passed without incident. The strange occurrences from that fateful summer had long been forgotten. Philip had left school and was now working, and Sarah, now in her 70s, had all but moved in with the Pritchards, but no one had witnessed any obscure happenings or strange noises. One day in August 1968, almost 2 years after the event started, Jean Pritchard had decided that she was going to do some decorating in the house, make the place feel a little bit brighter. As she was painting in Philip's bedroom, without warning there was a loud crash that emanated from the staircase. Worried, Jean jumped from the chair that she was standing on and looked over the banister to the stairs and noticed 3 plant pots which had been hanging on the wall. They were smashed and broken at the bottom of the stairs, soil covering the entire carpet. Jean passed it off as just a strange coincidence that all the plants fell at the same time. That night as she lay in bed trying to sleep, thoughts of the plant pots playing in her mind. She was trying to work out how they could have fallen when they've been hanging on the wall for so long. She decided to get out of bed and check on the children to make sure they were sleeping all right. She had taken all the painting supplies out of Philip's bedroom and they were on the landing. As she walked past, something zipped past her face. Shocked, she looked around to see what it was and found a paintbrush lying on the floor. She bent down to pick it up. A tin of paint flew and smashed against the wall, exploding, sending paint all over the landing. Jean burst into the bedroom, waking Joe up in hysterics as he tried to comprehend what was happening. The children appeared in the hallway as decorating utensils began to fly around the room. Paintbrushes crashing into the wall, rollers smashing into the floor. As Joe watched in horror as the objects flew around his children, he ran to the door to grab them as a paintbrush soared towards Diane. He shouted for her to move, but she was not quick enough and it hit her in the shoulder. Shocked, Joe grabbed his daughter and pulled her into the bedroom. Asking if she was okay, checking her over, she responded that it didn't even hurt. Although the paintbrush was thrown at her with such force, it appeared that the spirit didn't want to hurt her, but just to scare her. As the children bolted into their parents' room to avoid any more of the projectiles, the door to Diane's room slammed shut. Joe jumped up and tried to force the door open to see if he could see what was making all the noise. But as he grabbed the handle to the door, there was 3 loud bangs and he was thrown to the floor. For several minutes, they could hear banging and crashing from within the room, when all of a sudden, it stopped. The tools lay still, and Diane's room was silent. The sun took forever to rise as the family sat huddled in the parents' bedroom. Nothing would happen for a few days. It seemed that the poltergeist had some sort of routine. Events would only happen at night or in the evening when Diana was not at school. It's believed that poltergeist hauntings tend to happen when there's a teenage girl involved, due to the hormones that they are producing as they go through puberty. The family believed that this spirit, which they'd christened Fred, was focusing all of his energies on their daughter. The worst was yet to come, when the poltergeist would get physical.